My name is Frederick, and I'm actually pretty overwhelmed by the huge interest in our webinar. We have received registrations from companies and reporting experts all over the world and are expecting more than 200 registrations. So to all of you joining right now, a warm welcome from pretty sunny Vienna. First of all, let me give you a quick preview on what's in for you today. We will first present the results of our survey, in which more than 20,000 users took part. Then we will have an open discussion round, also joined by some of the participating companies. And of course, during the whole webinar, you are kindly invited to ask questions at any time, which we will then answer in the Q&A part in the end. First of all, I'd like to introduce the other speakers today. Here with me is Stéphanie, who is a professor at the Department for Accounting at Vienna University of Economics and Business. She was responsible for the academic direction of the study. Hi, Stéphanie. And also we have my colleague Eloy, who is CEO at Nexa. We are the leading agency for online reporting in Europe, and we are responsible for the technical implementation of the survey. And as I've already said, my name is Frederick, and I'm a project manager here at Nexa. So let's start with a very short introduction of our survey and the key question: who actually are the readers of annual reports? For printed reports and PDFs, there is no or only very little chance to analyze this. But of course, companies know how many printed copies they produced or how often people download the PDF. But what do they know about the actual use of the report? Do they, for example, know which chapters or sections are of most interest? Or do they know how many people actually took a look at, for example, the income statement? So you already know the answer, they do not. Online annual reports, on the other hand, provide a wide range of options to analyze the usage of corporate reports. So for the first time, reports can provide live data on the actual usage. You can exactly track how often your online report was visited as a whole, or, for example, which chapters and pages generated the biggest interest. And statistics and other analysis methods, like heat maps or others, offer detailed insight into the use of an online report. But, and this is actually the basis of today's research, also direct user feedback can be obtained in digital reports. For example, with integrated microsurveys, and that's exactly what we did in our survey. So with our research, we aimed to make the hidden users of annual reports visible and get answers to the three main questions you see right now. First of all, who are the main user groups of digital annual reports? Then, what are the main interests of the users? And last but not least, do different user groups have different interests in the annual report? In order to answer these research questions, we integrated a so-called microsurvey in the online annual reports of 10 stock-listed companies, mostly from the DACH region, meaning Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. During the use of the reports, the survey appeared on the screen, as you can see right now on the bottom right corner in black. And basically, it included two questions. First of all, the users were asked which stakeholder group they belong to. And secondly, they should state their respective fields of interest within the report. Oh, and by the way, in our survey, all data was collected anonymously, and we, of course, do not track any personal data, and also the IP addresses are anonymized. So before Stéphanie starts finally with the results after the slide, let me give you a bit of quantitative background information of our survey. As I've already said before, 10 companies and the reports took part in our survey. From December 2020 to July 2021, the 10 analyzed reports reached more than 300,000 visits and more than 800,000 page views. And in this time frame alone, more than 23,000 times users answered at least the first question of our survey. And with that information, now let me hand over to Stéphanie, who will present you the results of our survey. Stéphanie.
Thank you very much. So as you have heard, thanks to our cooperation with Nexa, we were the first ones to tackle the question about uses of annual reports. This has not been done before, and there is actually no comparable data available, neither in academia nor in practice. And we're happy to present what we have discovered. The first question concerns what most of you are interested in, namely who visits your sites, your annual reports. We asked the users which stakeholder groups they belonged to. That was a single choice question that appeared on the bottom of the screen. And our results show, maybe for some of you, a surprise that because most of the studies often only talk about the financial community, that the group that was the most important were employees. They amount to 25% of the users. Second are analysts. So here we have one group of the financial community. Third, with 14.5% are applicants or students that visit the annual reports. Next are retail shareholders and customers. So as you already see, a quite diverse group of stakeholders that are interested in the annual reports under consideration. As you can see, we then have sustainability experts with 4.4%, institutional investors, suppliers, journalists, and NGOs. So the group gets more and more diverse, showing that annual reports are not only a subject of interest for the financial community. However, if we aggregate analysts, retail shareholders, and institutional investors, we see that they make up the most important part of the visitors. However, if you remember, employees were 25%. So interest in the annual reports is not only coming from external stakeholders, but also from internal stakeholders, namely employees. I'm convinced we're going to discuss that later within our discussion. So the second question is now, what do these groups are really interested in? What are the topics they are looking at? Our results show that the most important topic of interest in general is how is the firm going? Is the firm earning money? It's the financial performance with 25.6% answer rate. After that, a pretty much non-financial topic, it's the strategy of the firm. And then already the topic of sustainability that has now recently come more and more into the mind of firms with the CSR directives from the European Union. Next, the topic of interest is management and the outlook with 8.8%. After that, users are interested in the company and the share, in risks, and information about segments and regions. These were the groups that we had as a multiple choice option. Now, what we did together with Nexa is that we aggregated some user profiles, because we just showed you these were the aggregated results: financial performance, strategy, sustainability. And now the next question obviously is, do certain user groups have specific interests in certain topics? So what do you expect? Do you expect the financial community, I guess this is not a surprise for you, has a high interest in the topic of financial performance, as you can see here in the spider graph. But we see that they're also interested in the strategy and the outlook. And for retail investors, obviously company and share is important. And institutional investors have an interest in the management as well. So do you think that employees have different interests? When we look at this spider graph, we see that the topics of interest for employees do not fundamentally differ. However, the idea for the employees may be another question, namely, will I is my payment, is my wage, according to the performance of the company maybe, whereas the financial community may be interested in another return. So we see employees and the financial community have pretty much the same interests. Now we see a group that differs a little bit. This is applicants or students, also mainly financial performance, but and also the topic of strategy. However, we see that 14.7% of applicants or students do integrate sustainability as a main topic of interest. And this is an important takeaway, I would say, for firms, that their future employees, for example, students or applicants, are also looking into their sustainability aspects of a certain firm. And finally, who else is interested in the topic of sustainability? Because of the importance of the topic, we have also looked into sustainability experts and see here that their main interest is sustainability topics with 44.9%. This is even more than the financial community with only 35% for financial performance. So they are very much concentrated on their topic of interest. Second topic of interest is strategy.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephanie, for presenting these indeed very interesting results. So before we start with the discussion, let me summarize the main findings of our survey. First of all, the image of report readers as a group of financial data junkies is a myth. A lot of analysts and financial investors are using digital reports, but reports obviously address a broad public and different stakeholders, as Stephanie just showed us. Then report users are still humans. Many consultants tell us actually that reports soon will be predominantly read by machines. And this, of course, is possible with XBRL and other technologies and will become more important. But right now, it is probably only practiced by very few stakeholders. So the general interest of the diverse audiences in annual reports, on the other hand, is still very high. And in our study alone, the 10 reports reached more than 300,000 users in just a few months. So what this also means is that if companies reduce their reports to simple database reporting or so-called XBRL only reports, in the future, they will ignore large parts of the actual usage groups. And in order to address these diverse stakeholders, it will certainly remain important for future reports to be three things: accessible, usable, and understandable, and of course also for non-specialist stakeholders. So our results show that there is a high interest in the financial performance, but also in qualitative information regarding topics such as strategy or sustainability, which we have just seen. And last but not least, reports also need to be visually appealing to reach their audience. So next to the regulatory content and the financial hard facts, it will also still be important to have a personal CEO letter or video, a great visualization of the business model, or maybe even a storytelling part. So the state-of-the-art way to do this is, of course, not a static PDF for download, but instead an interactive online report. And to enter our presentation, we would like to show you one example for this. Here you see some impressions from the digital annual report of Covestro. Covestro decided to put the digital version of the annual report in the center of their publication strategy. And as you can see right now, the HTML report offers a lot of financial information, but also storytelling elements, board videos, and interactive graphics. And as you see here, they also share the report content actively on social media and try to reach different user groups there. And by the way, they are very successful in doing that. And of course, users also do profit from the various features an online report has to offer, but I won't get into too much detail about that right now. So thank you very much for your attention so far. We would now like to start the discussion, to which I would like to welcome a few representatives from the participating companies. On the one hand, Laura Hennig and Julian Müller, who are both part of the investor relations team at Hugo Boss. And on the other hand, Markus Kleine-Beck, who is joining us from Hong Kong right now and who is part of the communications team at Covestro. Thank you very much to all of you for joining. Also, I'd like to invite all of you again to ask questions yourselves. Markus, as long as we're waiting for questions, let me ask you something. Covestro also took part in the user survey, and in some points, the results differ from the average. For example, the proportion of employees as a user group with 38% is significantly higher than the average with 25%. Do you have an explanation for this?
I could try to give one. Thanks, Frederick. Thanks, everyone. Just for anyone who doesn't know Covestro, we're actually a blue chip German B2B chemical company, right? So probably not that famous on top of everyone's minds, but that's what we do, and that doesn't like our business model doesn't prevent us from doing some good storytelling. And I think that's among the reasons, because we try to implement that also into our annual reports. That's one of the reasons why probably employees and other stakeholder groups, as you just mentioned, also visit our online annual report. And I think it's great stuff what you showed, and we particularly appreciate that we also get these kind of insights, because it's the first time obviously also for us to get these, and this certainly helps us also in the internal discussions that we have, focusing on quantitative annual report or quarterly reports only is certainly a point that we internally discuss all the time, right? So we, from communications perspective, which is where I'm coming from, we always say we still need the qualitative part. And I think these figures that you show and the results of the survey really prove that, and why particularly employees are interested in our annual report. I think first and foremost, as Stéphanie also mentioned earlier, employees are in general, I think, interested in the annual report. So the annual report for us is a tool for internal communication anyway. So figures and the account that the company gives on an annual basis in an annual report is just important, not just for the bonus, but for just getting an overview of how the company is doing, right? So that is, I think, the first thing, quantitative. And you see that in general, as you have shown, that employees with 25% across all the surveys make a big chunk of the general target audience or the survey respondents, right? And for us, I think what might draw additional employees to the annual report is probably the qualitative part. So you have shown very briefly that we try to, from a design perspective, from how we tell stories, that we make it interactive, that we cover a lot of or include a lot of different formats, that we try to really make it also entertaining, right? And then we also set a highlight, I would say, with the topic that we choose for the magazine of the annual report. I think employees, that's at least the feedback that I also get internally, are waiting for how the magazine is designed to see what topics are of so much importance, up to the highest echelons of the company, right? What topics get approved to be a highlight of the annual report. And I think that is really important, obviously, for employees as well. So they check what stories we tell, and we extend or augment the storytelling in social media, particularly this year. So we start before we publish the annual report, and we have throughout the entire course of the year more than 80 posts prepared. You just showed a glimpse of it, what we do on social media. And our followers on our corporate social media channels are, of course, also our employees. So we kind of draw them back into the annual report via our social media channels also. And I think this, in a combination of these parts that I just mentioned, might be the reason why we are above, or why we are the outlier among the survey participants, or why particularly a lot of employees visit our annual report. That's at least my takeaway from this.
Okay, let me ask one more thing, because we have another interesting finding at your case, because there's also a very high percentage of users searching for sustainability information, with almost 20%, which is really high. And what do you think, why is this so relevant for especially for your report stakeholders?
Macro level kind of stuff, right? But just judging also by 14%, if you look at the general survey respondents, sustainability seems to be on top of everyone's minds these days in general, and that shows also in the survey results overall, right? So it's 14% roughly for as average, and it's 20% almost for us at Covestro. And that I think is because for us as chemical company and for us at Covestro, basically we have, if you look at our strategy, for example, we have 3 strategic pillars. 2 of them are related to sustainability. If you look at our corporate vision that we announced last year, it is we want to become fully circular. So it addresses again sustainability. If you look at the focus topic of the magazine of this year's annual report, you look at the front page, is one circular vision, it's circular economy, right? So we have been campaigning around this topic for ever since we became an independent company back in 2015. And I think stakeholders, employees, whoever it might be, look also in the annual report for proof, right? We talk a lot. We talk a lot about sustainability. We want to recycle all the material, all the plastics material that we produce. We want to only have renewable energies. We want to reduce our CO2 emissions. And I think people just look for proof, right? And the annual report is one specific document, one specific tool where people might find exactly those kind of information. So I think that is probably one of the reasons, and the other is what I just mentioned, the qualitative part and the augmentation of the storytelling that we did via social media. So we might have drawn additional attention via that campaign back to the annual report in the past months, and the campaign is still going on actually until the end of the year. So we might see that number even increasing.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Markus, for joining today. Now over to you, Laura and Julian from Hugo Boss. Julian, let me start with you. Hugo Boss also participated in this survey. Why is it for you important to know which stakeholder groups are using your report?
Well, first of all, thank you for that question, Frederick. So let me try. At Hugo Boss, we obviously always strive to further enhance our financial reporting excellence. And this means that with our Hugo Boss online annual report, we want to be, well, value adding by first and foremost offering analysts and institutional investors highly relevant and comprehensive information. So also here, it's all about knowing your customer. That's, I think, why the survey provided us with the great opportunity to better understand who is actually using our report and what content our stakeholders are focusing on the most. So therefore, based on the survey's insights, we are now able to align our reporting even more closely with our stakeholders' specific needs. For example, those of current and potential employees, retail shareholders, or even actual customers of our Boss and Hugo products that all turned out to also be using our online report to a meaningful extent. So overall, we really appreciate the additional insights that the short survey provided us with, as it will really help us to develop our reporting further in the coming years. For example, by further balancing our content for all relevant user groups when designing the landing page for our next online report, for instance.
Okay, and of course, we have some interesting findings at Hugo Boss as well. Laura, compared to the average, almost twice as many private stakeholders use your report. What is your explanation for this?
Yeah, thanks also from my side, Frederick. Well, we see several reasons for that, I would say, and some of them are also related to the pandemic, of course. Well, especially at the time when the pandemic broke out, Hugo Boss saw, amongst many others, of course, a decline in its share price. And we believe that the lower entry price level was quite a good opportunity for many shareholders, for many private shareholders, to add Hugo Boss to their portfolio, and therefore we understand that there's a high demand to inform themselves about Hugo Boss. And yeah, in addition, due to the pandemic, some physical events, of course, had to be declined. So usually Hugo Boss participates in a few events per year to inform potential and also existing retail shareholders about the company. And yeah, they were declined. So users had to look for other ways to get informed. And yeah, last but not least, I would say that our website is our main point of contact for retail shareholders to learn more about Hugo Boss. So that was also a reason.
Okay, yeah, and also the information on company and share as well as the outlook are higher rated than the average. What do you think? Why is that?
Yeah, we believe, and I think that's also what Stephanie mentioned before, this observation is also related to the large number of retail shareholders visiting our report. We were and are, of course, well known for a very attractive dividend policy. That's why we believe the share chapter is of high interest for them. And yeah, in addition, we also saw that, driven also by media reporting, high interest in our shareholder structure. Some changes arose here, in particular at the time of the publication of this year's annual report. And on the outlook chapter, you also asked, the apparel industry was defined by many uncertainties this year and in the last year in the light of lockdowns and related temporary store closures, of course. And therefore only a few peers published a detailed guidance for fiscal year 2021. And that's probably one of the reasons why this chapter was of particularly high interest.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much to all of you for these very valuable insights. Now let me briefly introduce Christina. She's also a colleague of mine from the project management team here at Nexa, and she's managing the audience questions today. Christina, are there any more questions from the audience right now?
Thank you, Frederick. Yes, we received some questions, and I'd like to start with the first one, which is, could we guess that employees are most interested in the remuneration of executive board and the money that the leaders of the company earn?
From my side, very good question. I think we see it in the detailed statistics that compensation is always a big topic in annual reports, but we don't have so far study data on this. But Stephanie, maybe we are working on another more detailed study on what the users really use. Maybe you can give us a few more insights on this, because maybe this research will answer this question.
Thank you very much, Eloy, and thank you very much for the question too. Yes, indeed. Because we could only give you a brief overview of what we have found, we are working from an academic perspective on more in-detail profiles and also investigating what pages do analysts then really visit if they answered the question, etc. And we will try to make more comparisons that are statistically valid. So the next step of our study is to go more into depth of these answers. However, our first idea was to work together with the partners and to present the first results that give broad overviews, but the next step is more details. And from what I remember, Eloy, I think we can answer this question with a yes in general, that yes, compensation and the management board compensation are important for employees. And I think Markus wanted to add something, no?
No, not really. I mean, that's an interesting insight. I was just saying, I would be surprised, not disappointed, but of course that's a topic of interest, right? Remuneration for us is also certain figures like cash flow, etc., that are relevant for the bonus. But I would hope that besides the remuneration of the top 4 in our case of our company, there are other parts also qualitatively that might be of interest. That's just another point.
Yes, we found some others. We found qualitative data as well, but indeed this is a question. Also, we have another study going where we looked into what people looked for, what were the main search words, and compensation is here a very important topic. Yeah. But we didn't separate users here. That was a study we presented last year, Eloy, at the DRC, where we showed that one of the top search words in reports was remuneration.
All right. Fair enough. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your answers. So we're moving on to the next question, which are actually 2 questions that I would like to summarize. And the people are interested in if we could track machine readers or users of the reports, and if we know who is using XBRL data at the moment.
So from our perspective, we don't track this at the moment because from a use case perspective, I don't think that people will download the XBRL file in our reports. They will download it on the pages and digital offers where they can download all files, all XBRL files from different companies and then compare the data. We don't have data on this so far, but I would say that most readers, so in this study, we reached more than 300,000 users of annual reports, and I would assume that just a very, very small share of these people is using XBRL at the moment. So I think at the moment, it's still a minor topic on the user side, and maybe just for very specialized users like analysts or big financial investors.
Thank you very much, Eloy. The next question we've got is rather a comment, and maybe you've got some thoughts on it. So it's the visit page view ratio isn't very high, 2.6. This leads to a conclusion that a quick search for data points is the dominant motivation for users. What do you think about this comment?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like annual reports are normally used because I always say nobody reads the annual report. Because nobody is going to the annual report and is reading every page, maybe a few analysts, but not many people. And most people have a very specific interest in the annual report. For example, they want to get more information on the compensation, on the share, on whatever. And then they join the annual report, maybe read 2 pages or search for the most interesting term. And that's it. So it's normal for annual reports that people in average are using 2 or 3 pages in average. Of course, there are users also using 10 or 20 pages, but the average is about 3 pages, more or less.
Thank you very much. The next question we've got is directed to Markus Kleine-Beck from Covestro, and it's rather a specific Covestro directed question, which is, how large is the team working on the annual report, and when do you start with your report?
Good one. Thanks for the question. How to start? I think starting with the preparations for the annual report in general is immediately after the publication of one annual report. The preparation for the next one starts with debriefs, etc. But actually for the magazine and further alignments for the management report, for example, we start in summer usually. So May, June is where we start, and that also brings me to the team size. Let's say we have a core team of 3 people in communications and 2 to 3 people in accounting. And the division of tasks, how we divide this, is basically the overarching design, the magazine, all the qualitative things are done by communications, and the management report, etc., is done by the accounting colleagues. So that is the team sizes. 5 to 6 colleagues, and we start basically in summer of each year with more details. And then the larger team, of course, accounting and we ourselves. So when we generate stories or generate the data or get the risk analysis, the outlook, the bonus, the performance, the HR information, right? This includes a much larger team, but the core team is 5 to 6 people.
Thank you very much for explaining this process with a few words. So the next question we've got is, a corporate report has diverse stakeholders. That is not new, but how does knowing which stakeholder groups is using our report, what will change?
So I think maybe Julian, you also addressed this question in the beginning. So what is the value of knowing which stakeholders are using the report for Hugo Boss?
Well, actually, for us, it's now the first time that we really know who is using our report, to what extent, and what topics they are focusing on. So when I think about the next reporting season, that is just about to approach us rather sooner than later, we will really now incorporate this feedback. And for example, when thinking about designing our landing page for next year's online report. It's about now even better balancing out the different needs of the really diverse user groups. So we need to think about that we also make this report as attractive as possible for employees and potential employees, for retail shareholders. We didn't expect them to have such a meaningful share amongst our users. So I think, well, this is now really interesting for us, and now to incorporate these results when designing next year's annual report.
Sounds similar to, I think, what we will do. I think we mentioned this briefly. Also, this helps us to argue internally. So definitely we won't go for a quantitative only solution then in the future. I think if we take these figures and these survey results with us, this gives us a very good ammunition, let's say, to argue for the case, to make the case for a qualitative approach also in the next annual report. We can see our measures working, right? So we can kind of, at least, as I said earlier, we didn't have these insights at all before. So we can at least kind of see, all right, if we produce qualitatively, if we address more sustainability related topics, then we actually meet the demands for information of the audience, right? And as mentioned by Julian, we can certainly also think about targeting the information and the content even further based on the target groups that visit the report, mostly according to the survey.
And may I add, I think that there's two aspects about this study. On the one hand, you have, as Julian and Markus said, the user groups, the audience. But on the other hand, what we tackled also is the topics. And looking at the recent discussion about sustainability and how standard setters and regulators try to put really a focus on these topics, I think that our results confirm that these are topics of interest. And going back to these standard setters, most of them, like in the financial reporting and now coming for the sustainability, is one of the main assumptions is that investors are the primary users of annual reports, of financial reports. If you look in detail how they provide standards, how they work on the standards, and how groups of standard setters are made up. Basically, it's institutional investors, it's big four companies, it's accountants. These are the main lobby groups. But our results show whatever the main reasons for their usage are employees, for example. And I think this is not something that we should just ignore. It is for companies very important. It may be that they come from social media. However, they look into annual reports and thus should be considered in different processes. And last but not least, Markus talked about the story that Covestro was having with sustainability, that the circular economy topic. And what we see here is, does the company walk the talk? And there's also this check. And from this perspective, looking at how students and applicants look into sustainability for firms, that should be something they think about, because the job market, I think, is getting more and more complicated also for companies, and knowing also what students and applicants look into can help you target this user group as well.
Thank you very much. The next question we've got is there a correlation between company size and the number of users of an online report? Elo, I guess that's a question for you.
Yeah, definitely there is one. So, but not in any case. So there are. It's not just depending on the size of the company, but for example, if you're a brand, a well-known brand, then you normally have more users. Or if you are highly involved in the capital market with private shareholders, and you also have more users. So there were different dependencies, I would say.
Thank you. And I guess the next question is also a question for you, because it's Considering the findings of your survey, how do you see the future of the printed annual report versus the online report?
I think that's maybe a question for the company. So maybe Laura, would you like to give an insight on this?
Well, I think, can you hear me? So my micro says muted. Okay, that's good. Well, we stopped printing annual reports, Julian, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2018, I would say. And yeah, in the first year, there were like a few calls asking, well, can I receive it? And we said, no printing anymore. And I think our community is quite fine with that at the moment. And we see a lot of users also switching to the online annual reports. So I would say from our perspective, in the next years, we don't see a return to printing annual reports again.
Yeah, I can only echo what you said, Laura. Also from our perspective, there is no future for the printed annual report, right? At Covestro, we just stopped it this year, actually, for the first time last year. I mean, since we became independent and a member of the MDAX and the DAX, we had like smaller and smaller, like the number of printed versions that we put out became smaller and smaller, right? So we started with a 5-digit figure, then we went down to 4 figures, then went down to almost 3 figures only, and now we just said, all right, let's go for online only, and no one complained, right? I mean, I didn't hear any outcry or anything similar, so it seems to be just have been accepted. And for us, is of course an efficiency thing. We save the costs, we save the resources and the hours that we would need to spend to. In the end, is also duplication of effort anyway, right? We still have the PDF, but we don't do the entire printing, go into the printer and whatnot. So we save resource, we save the money, and no one seems to bother. It doesn't seem to bother anyone too much. So from our perspective, no future for the printed annual report.
Thank you very much. I guess that also answers the next question our users were interested in, which is how the processes at Hugo Boss and Covestro changed with the publication of a digital report. Does someone like to add something to the question? Maybe. If not, we'll turn to the next one.
Yeah, it was kind of a process. Maybe just to add a few sentences. As I said, it was less and less printed. So we started with print only actually, and only had like a few websites covering some of the stories. So we had print and PDF, and then only few stories being added to our corporate website. And this shifted more and more to digital and online only. So it was pretty much a process. But in the production, let's say, of the content, be it for the management report, for the financial statement, I think that all largely remained the same. I mean, Eloy, I think you are working closer with the accounting colleagues, let's say, on that part, and you can maybe say if they changed anything specifically. But I think just from my perspective, that remained the same, and we now save the whole printing effort, or not the switch in any other way.
Yeah, regarding the accounting part, Covestro is using a disclosure management tool called Smart Notes, and so from the process side, we just have a process of creating the digital report based on this disclosure management tool. But I think the biggest change is always to change your mind shift from print to online. So when now we talk about the next magazine or story part in the Covestro annual report, we start with the digital version with the screen in mind. So we first think, how can we tell the story online, because most users will see it on a screen. And that's the biggest change in terms of digital reporting. And also it often takes a few years until you really change it and can say that you have a digital first report, let's say.
Thank you very much. There's another question regarding the print or online discussion, which is, do you see a correlation of the print discussion with the size of the retail shareholder base?
Problem is that nobody is printing here, but Julian,
Well, I mean, prior to stop printing our annual report, of course, we were thinking about potential consequences that especially the retail shareholders on the annual shareholders meeting will run crazy, because they are used normally that we hand out our printed annual report to them. So what we did in the first year where we stopped printing the annual report was that we prepared like really a short and really comprehensive version of the annual report, which was not more than, let's say, 20 pages in a very small format. And this was then used in the first year at the annual shareholders meeting for everybody who then asked us, can I have an annual report? And then we said, no, we stopped printing because we want to be digital, we want to be sustainable. But here you can have this short and small, let's say, flyer with just the most important information of the annual report. And this was well received. And the year after, there was no one again asking for an annual report. So, I mean, we have a big retail shareholder base, to get back to the question, and we feared that that we got complaints a lot, but actually that wasn't the case. Just like Laura indicated a couple of minutes ago, there were like a few calls of some people who are used to call us, and then we'll send the annual report, but we could then argue that with our focus on digitization and sustainability, it's no longer on vogue to print, and in the meantime, everybody got used to it.
Thank you for your answer. The next question leads us to the discussion about XBRL and ESEF again. And the question is, how is XBRL and ESEF requirements being met with the new innovative interactive annual reports?
So the question is how it will be connected. So from my perspective, the best scenario for the future will be that it's really that the digital version is the XBRL report, so that it's really in the digital report. But if you do something like this, you need a use case for this, because if at the end of the day people will download the XBRL files from a crawler, then you don't need to combine it with your digital report, because humans will read the annual report, and the analysts by machines will get the data from the crawler directly. So there is no use case. So I think this is still in a development, and we need to see what the future solution will be. But maybe some of the participants also has opinion on this, so please feel free to add this. Christina, do we have any more questions? Or
yeah, we've got a lot of them.
Still. Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to wait till someone says something about this question. The next question leads us to the topic of social media. So it's, do you have data or analytics on social media posts focused on the annual report content?
We personally not, but I think Markus, you are doing a lot of social media with Covestro. I think internally you may have some data, but I don't know if you can share this.
Yeah, that is accurate. I'm just trying to. I think I recently saw some figures. 1.5 million impressions, 25,000 engagements is what we have. And as I said, we have like 80 plus posts just related to annual report content. So this is kind of reflected. So I can certainly provide more. We have more I just don't have it at hand right now, right? So I think this is what I can share.
Yeah. In general, social media, and we call this push reporting, so the active communication of reporting content in social media has a huge impact on the statistics of annual reports. And from my perspective, this is becoming more and more important for companies because social media are a source of information today, especially regarding financial information, for example, LinkedIn, but also Twitter and other channels. Even Instagram is getting relevant for investor relations communication in future, for my opinion, especially for young stakeholders. And why not sharing the messages from the annual report on these platforms and reaching the users where they are and connect them with the digital report?
So we've got another question, which is, in your shown examples of the 10 reports, are the legal documents for filing generated from the same data source, or is this a completely different production aspect?
No, that's the same data source. So normally there is disclosure management involved, and that's the data source for all the reports.
So another question I've got for you is also regarding XBRL, which is apparently a very high topic of interest for our users. So do you think that inline XBRL strikes the right balance for a reporting format, considering the dual needs of automated data for analysis and qualitative information for human consumption, which is the majority of the readers of annual reports?
I didn't really get that question. Frederick, Stephanie, do you have an opinion on that? So if maybe you can repeat it again.
Do you think that XBRL strikes the right balance for a reporting format, considering the dual needs of automated data for analysis, which is the minority of the readers, and qualitative information for the human consumption, which are probably most of the readers of the annual report?
I think it's a pretty technical question, first of all, how XBRL can be integrated in the software you use for the online reporting.
Okay.
However, on the other hand, I think what the question tackles as well is looking into, as we said, the people or readers are very much interested in qualitative content. And thus, qualitative content is not in this first taxonomy integrated as much in this taxonomy. So the question is, do we need some further tagging, or how is this going to evolve? However, I say I would give this back now to Freddie and Eloy to say how it's implemented. So this is how I would understand the question.
So now I get maybe the question. So technically wise, there was not a single problem to have the XHTML table, including all the text in the report. And as said before, I think that will be done in future as soon as there was a use case of using the data from these files directly. So as long as there is no use case for this, then people will provide their XBRL data sheets separately, for my opinion.
And I may add something. We will need this. We do need XBRL in the context of financial reporting concerning legal requirements. Maybe we haven't talked about this that much, but therefore it is essential, because what we have missed right now in Europe was a comparable taxonomy, or even for people who were interested in data, in financial data, to be able to extract data and compare data of different firms. Looking at the US part, where you have the 10Ks and where you can download all the relevant financial data, this was something that was not possible in the European context at all. And with XBRL now, we are getting there slowly. And I think we should look at this discussion also to see that we're looking into this annual online reporting component that is important in the context of the whole annual report. Who uses it? Why is it used? And then we have the XBRL component also in the tagging and the financial reporting and the legal requirements for companies, and looking at sustainability or what you said, remuneration, etc. It's tackled by standard setters and regulations. However, there is much more in annual reports than only these legal requirements.
Thank you very much for your answers there. We've got another question or a comment that is, I was very astonished to see the aspects, risks and outlooks were almost not mentioned, rather an observation than a question. Consultants and frameworks like GRI, TCFD, and so on are putting a great emphasis on this. And the person who's asking a question is also saying that he or she is not saying that we should do less of describing risks. Do you have any comment on why the aspects, risk and outlooks were almost not mentioned?
Stephanie, maybe regarding the frameworks.
I wouldn't say it was not mentioned at all. It was not mentioned among the top 3. And I agree, you're talking about how especially reporting now requires the description of certain risks. However, financial performance is of importance, and strategy and risk as well. So I think we will look into further detail how this was tackled and by which stakeholder groups, how often. But I think it is still of importance, because it's, if I look, I just have to look at the slide again. It's among the top 10 and it's 7th, and for some companies it's even further up. So from this point of view, I still think it's a topic of interest, bearing in mind that our range was much larger, and it is 6.5%. That is very much from our answer rate, although it's not the top 3. However, I mean, we can agree that financial performance is also the most regulated if we look at, as you said, IFRS, etc. So from my perspective, it makes sense. But I understand where you are coming from and how you see it. And it was also a surprise to see that risks are not clicked on as much.
Yeah. You need to keep in mind that so these reports analyzed have reached like this over 300,000 users in the frame, so in just a few months in the frame of the study, and 6% in relation are still like more than around 20,000 users asking for risk information. So it's still a lot, and but maybe a more specific topics than, for example, the financial performance. And maybe we need to check this in detail. Specific target groups like employees are less interested in the risk section. Okay, I think we are coming to an end of the time. A lot of questions. So Christina, maybe a last one, if you have one.
Yeah, we've got a last one that's also looking into the future of the user survey, which is, will the user survey be used again in the next year, and will it be changed, expanded, and in what ways? Do you already have plans for the future?
Hopefully you will use it to get more data. We're looking forward, no? Markus, Julian, Laura.
Absolutely, whatever further developments, whatever you can provide, we will be more than happy to implement into our next online annual report. We are very much looking forward to getting hands on such data and insights as well. So yes, definitely.
Julian, you are muted.
You're muted.
Just wanted to add that it's basically the same for us. So we were very interested, like I already said, in the results in the first year, but we are very much looking forward for anything you can provide us with to get even more details and getting to know our customer base even better in the future.
Yeah. So far also, maybe we couldn't cover all of your questions, but you see we are at the end of the time. So please, if you have still questions which have not been covered yet, you are always free to send us an email to office@nexa.com.
Okay, then I'll do the rest again. Thank you very, very much to all of our speakers and company representatives for taking the time and taking part today. And of course, thanks to all of you for your huge interest and the very insightful discussion in the end. We did record the webinar and we'll send you the link within the next few days. And as Ella just said, in case you have any more questions, feel free to contact us at any time. So that's it for today. Thanks again and have a nice and hopefully very sunny weekend.